What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Faithful Fanatic Show. We are continuing Phillies playoff talk. The March to Red October starts tomorrow night at the Bank versus the Miami Marlins. I am joined by Connor Thomas. You guys might know him from his work over at 97.5 The Fanatic, where he does a little bit or a lot of bit of everything. He's also the host of the Locked On Phillies podcast and a contributor over at Bleacher Report. My man, thank you for joining us. And what is going on?
Not much, man. Just been busy, A lot of stuff going on with the Phils lately. They win 90 games. They're the top wild card seed. You got a home wild card series this year, so you got that to take into account. And figuring out what was going on in the NL wild card race, like it seemed like no team wanted to play the Phillies. No,
Yeah.
I say that kidding. Like these teams are going in. The Marlins, the Diamondbacks. I mean, any team in any wild card race still thinks they have a chance, but no
Right.
one wanted to lock down that 2 seed. So it took a little bit to figure out who the Phils would be facing. But everything's all good now. Marlins, we're zoned in. They start tomorrow night. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, it was a hectic race. Obviously, the Cubs had a Phillies-esque collapse, right? A Phillies-esque September, like the past couple of seasons. But it was very refreshing to kind of clinch not only a playoff spot, but the number one wild card seed, where you do get that home field in the first round, which I think is huge. And it's where I'll start my question for you. Look, I know it sounds silly, and I know we kind of like to embrace our fandom and we like to take credit for things. Obviously, the Trey Turner ovation, it starts there, and we did that, right? We helped turn Trey's season around, right? But it really is when you hear the comments last postseason of the 3 hours of hell, and you see what that ballpark looks like. And that was different, man. That was just, we're happy to get back in. Oh, wow, look at this ride we're on. We're just happy to be here, and let's see how far this thing goes. This is more business-esque this year. The expectations have risen to World Series level expectations. What do you expect that ballpark to look like tomorrow night compared to when they came home last year?
It's going to be absolutely packed. Now, I'm a little bit worried because last year, and this is just not so much about the Marlins. We'll get into my worry about the Marlins and everything.
Right.
But last year, you got to remember, they finished off with a couple of road series. They were on like a long road trip. And then they go to St. Louis and they play 2 games against the Cardinals. Would have been 3 if they hadn't swept them, but they did. So that was nice. And then you go down to Atlanta and you have to play the first 2 games of the NLDS on the road.
Right.
So it was a long time where the Philadelphia Phillies had clinched the postseason, clinched and won the wild card series, and then won one of 2 games down in Atlanta. And then they're coming back, and this fan base had not had a chance to watch their team in person for a long time. So that kind of all exploded into a lot of excitement. I worry that because it's not like that whole buildup like it was last year, that the crowd might not be the same. But then I think, wait, no, it's still this Philadelphia fan base. It's like it's a dumb concern because that place is going to be just as loud as it was last year.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, it's going to be a wild environment, and the fans are going to 100% play a factor in this series.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I'm looking ahead sort of to who they would play next, but especially, obviously, it's not against them yet. But when you hear the comments made by that nerd of a mustache of Spencer Strider, just let's go back to 2020. No fans, you know where that hatred comes from. You know where that mental block comes from for him. Reese Hoskins, best like, but. Yeah. So when you hear that, you know this crowd is probably going to be even more amped up and ready to go, especially looking forward as to who they would be getting next potentially. Now, you did say you might have some concerns about the Marlins. Would you have rather have gotten the Diamondbacks, or do you prefer this matchup versus Miami?
It's weird. I would have rather gotten the Diamondbacks, but all the numbers say that you'd much rather face the Marlins. I mean, the Marlins scored like the 6th least runs in all of baseball this year, maybe the 5th. I was just looking at that. They scored like around 660 runs. The Phillies scored almost 130 more than them. So maybe even 130 more. Like it was a wild discrepancy in runs scored. And the Diamondbacks were up there closer to where the Phillies are. Their pitching staff, the numbers look better for the Diamondbacks. But what concerns me the most about the Marlins is the number one most dangerous thing in the postseason is a team that believes that they could beat you. Not like, oh, well, we made it. Let's see what happens. We're underdogs, but we got a chance. No, this Marlins team has the belief that they can hang with this Phillies team in very much the same way that the Phillies have a belief they can hang with the Braves. It doesn't matter how many games apart they are in the standings or what the numbers say. Familiarity between divisional opponents is a real thing. And in the postseason, a team that has hope that they can beat you, belief that they can beat you, that's a dangerous opponent.
Yeah. No, especially with how good they are in one-run ball games. The number of one-run ball games they won, obviously, they came back against Pittsburgh, I believe, in the first game of that series and won another one-run ball game. It was ridiculous, man. But and it's weird. You talked about their run scored and their lack of offense. Kind of, I don't fear either offense, but I much rather would have played Arizona's lineup than I would have the Miami Marlins offense. Again, that's just a feeling for me. You mentioned the numbers don't exactly line up in that way, but when you talk about a guy in Jorge Soler with that pop at the top of the lineup, you talk about the NL batting champ in Luis Arias, Josh Bell comes over, Jake Burt, like they have guys, Jazz Chisholm, energy guys that can kind of light a spark. Where I look at that young team in Arizona. All right, yeah, Corbin Carroll, if he gets on base, is a problem. Christian Walker can be a problem, but you can tell but after like the 4 or 5 hole hitter, I don't fear anyone in that Diamondbacks lineup. The pitching staff, you mentioned that. Obviously, the numbers would tell you if you get Gallen, if you get Merrill Kelly, they are the problem staff. But you get the lefties, Braxton Garrett, Jesus Luzardo in game 1. Is there any worry to you there? And does Topper revert back to his analytics, Marsh, Stott? Is there any fear or that he kind of goes to Sosa, or does he let the guys play?
He's going to let the guys play, I believe, but there's a healthy concern about the lefty-heavy pitching staff that the Marlins have. I mean, that's a real thing. It's another reason why this matchup isn't the most ideal one for the Philadelphia Phillies, because they're better built to face right-handed hitters. I mean, Kyle Schwarber hit 47 home runs this year. He's a lefty. Bryce Harper led the team in average, 293. Hit over 20 bombs himself, lefty. I mean, some of the young hitters who have been a big part of the team this year. Bryson Stott has arguably been your most consistent contributor
from
when it comes to just like getting the ball in play, setting the table. Lefty. Brandon Marsh, lefty. Like, these are guys that are a big part of this team that are at a disadvantage against left-handed pitchers, besides maybe Bryson Stott, who sees them pretty well. And I mean, that's the thing, right? I say that, but at the same time, think about those names. It's Kyle Schwarber, it's Bryce Harper. Like, these guys are going to hit against anybody. So you should have a healthy level of concern, but you still have to acknowledge that the Phillies are the much more talented team despite matchups.
I agree. I did see a number this morning as well that the Phillies have kind of balanced out hitting righties and lefties this year, and they actually, is it OPS or OBP? They have a higher percentage versus lefties than right-handed pitching this year. But it'll be interesting. They do not have good numbers against Luzardo, I don't believe, this season.
They don't. They haven't seen him very well. A lot of the guys historically in the lineup has not seen him well. Guess what? Doesn't matter.
I was just going to say.
Do you think Luzardo's ever pitched in an environment like the one he's about to pitch in Citizens Bank Park? Like, that's the other thing, right?
Yeah.
We look at it and we say, okay, they're familiar with the team, right? The Braves were familiar with this team last year, and you saw what happened when they came into Citizens Bank Park. The Marlins are not built around players with a lot of playoff experience. Correct. They're not. The last time they made it in was 2020. It was a shortened season. There were no fans in the building until the World Series. Like, it was totally different. This team hasn't played in like a legitimate playoff game environment in God knows how long. And they're going to come into the toughest one in all of baseball. That's a huge factor.
I agree. Punch, counter punch, man. But you mentioned letting, Marsh and Stott hit and start versus lefties, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. I'm also a big believer in just in sending out your best 9, your most talented lineup, your best lineup. That's what I want Rob Thompson to do this postseason run. And to me, that includes letting the rookie play out there in center field every day. Do you think Johan Rojas will get the nod tomorrow night against Miami?
I do. I think it's going to be Brandon Marsh in left field. I think it's going to be Johan Rojas in center. Castellanos in right. Harper would obviously be at first with Kyle Schwarber DHing. And then the infield looks like you expect it to do. Stott, Turner, Bohm, Remuda behind the plate. And I'm trying to decide who I think should start game 1 for the Philadelphia. Oh, wait. Yeah, Zach Wheeler is going to be on the mound. He's going to look damn good tomorrow night.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. And the thing is, you're going to question Thompson because he is he's a player's coach, but he also has his veterans back, and he likes, like we said last year in the World Series run, he likes to go back to the analytics and what do the numbers tell you. And to me, it would kind of somewhat shock me if Rojas is out there, but that's your best 9, dude, and that's what you have to do, whether it's the Marlins or the Braves or the Astros. If you were to get that far, that's the lineup you throw out there. You mentioned Zach Wheeler gets to start tomorrow night. I want to look at game 2, and I want to look at the guy on the mound for the Phillies in that matchup, and that's Aaron Nola. He's put together 2 good starts. clinched, looked good. Do you have any confidence that Aaron Nola can wind back the clock to this time last year? Not World Series Aaron Nola or NLCS Aaron Nola, put wild card and NLDS Aaron Nola. Can he get right? Because to me, dude, he might not be the biggest X factor, but he is damn sure the guy that needs to step up the most for this ball club to make another run.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's been the narrative all year long. He's been inconsistent, and that's being kind, but he's been kind of hot recently. Confidence is not the word I would use with Aaron Nola, and I don't think anyone should be looking at his season in 2023 and say, I'm confident in this guy doing anything, whether that's being good or being bad. Here's the key. Here's what you need to remember. You don't have to go into the game with confidence. You could go into the game saying, I have no idea what Aaron Nola is going to look like, because that's how I'm going in, and that's how he's kind of earned the right for fans to look at him after this season. But the ceiling is still there. He's still, despite how bad of a year he's had those performances where he's gone 8 innings, like 2 hits against the Astros, like way back when, start of the season.
Apple TV.
It's still in him. Like, he can still do that any given day. The thing is, it's very, very inconsistent as to what Aaron Nola you're getting. So don't go in with any expectations. Go in with the understanding that at his best, he's a very, very good pitcher. At his worst, he's a very, very bad pitcher, and we don't know what one we're going to get. So just watch the game, and we'll have to make our determinations after.
I think one thing, continuing to look at this rotation and the pitching staff that the Phillies have here, that's very interesting to me this year compared to last. There seems to be a lot more concern or discussion around the arms this year heading into last year than compared to last year, but they're definitely a shit ton deeper this year compared to where they were last year. What do you think, Thompson, using that bullpen, piggybacking when you have guys like Sanchez, Lorenzen, Walker, who I don't know if we want to let Taijuan Walker start the first inning of the game, but maybe coming in the 4th or 5th, I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think Thompson does with the bullpen, with the back end of this rotation?
So the guys that are absolutely going to get the ball in starts for the postseason this year are Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, and Ranger Suarez. Those guys 100% are going to start because those were guys that are battle proven from last year that have pitched well enough this year, with Ranger Suarez probably being the slightest exception to that. Aaron Nola has had his moments where he's looked good.
Yeah.
Ranger Suarez had the forearm issue coming out of the World Baseball Classic. He's been on the injured list a couple times. He's been in a good stretch recently, but he's the guy I'd be most concerned about of those three, because I haven't really seen the vintage Ranger Suarez performance multiple times this year. Then the question is, so in a 4-game series, but in like a 5-game, 7-game, Taijuan Walker is going to get the ball. That's the guy that's going to get that start, and for good reason, because even when he's bad, he's a pitcher that's not ever going to go out there and give you 3 innings. He's going to get to 6 or 7 or heck, even 8 if he's throwing really well. And when you get deeper into the postseason, bullpen tiring is a real thing. He's a valuable piece to have start a game just because he can eat up innings, and he can still be very, very good occasionally. So those are the 4 guys. No one else touches the ball starting for me.
Interesting. I was going to say slightly kidding, but not so slightly kidding. Is there a world where you let Christopher Sanchez just throw the first inning of the Taijuan Walker start, and then let him come in? Because oh my goodness, my man has like a billion ERA in the first inning this year, and then he just turns into Cy Young. He's just lights out from the second to the 6th.
Yeah, I think Christopher Sanchez might be your second most valuable pitcher on this postseason roster behind Aaron Nola, or second most crucial, I should say. Zach Wheeler is the most important guy, but because Christopher Sanchez, to me, the way that I would employ him, because he has some bullpen experience, as does Michael Lorenzen, but Lorenzen's more of like a true reliever at points in his career. Sanchez is still young, but Lorenzen's going to be in the pen. And Sanchez, I'm having him ready for any game where a starter might get in trouble anytime before like the 4th inning. Yeah. So if Aaron Nola is struggling in the 3rd, Christopher Sanchez has to be ready to go out there and get you 3-4 innings of work. Same thing with the next day. Same thing with the day after that. I'm not saying he'll do it every day, but I'm saying he needs to be prepared. You know how they did the piggyback thing last year where they would throw Noah Syndergaard and then someone would come in out of the pen, whoever that might be, whether it was Bailey Falter or whatever. Ranger Suarez was working out of the pen at points. Yeah. I think Christopher Sanchez is like kind of your utility pitcher, and that you can use him in a lot of different spots, and he's very valuable in that way. That's why I wouldn't have him start. Not because I don't think he's capable, but because I think he would be best in that utility type of pitcher use role. And then the back end of the bullpen looks like it does all year. Kimbrel's going to be your closer. I know he's had points where he struggles. He's going to be the guy who closes games. He's a veteran. Alvarado is going to be your high leverage lefty. And then you're going to piecemeal something with Jeff Hoffman, Greg Soto, Matt Strahm, Sir Anthony Dominguez. And those are the guys you feel less confident about. Orion Kerkering's an interesting one because he's a guy that is progressing quickly, not just through the minors to be a major leaguer this year, but like every time he gets a start, Rob Thompson has more great things to say about him. He's going to definitely get innings this postseason. The question is, will they be the we're up 7, go get us 3 out kids, or we're down 10 and getting smoked in a game where we've already, like, let's say, for example, in Atlanta, you win game 1, game 2, and this
you're
is
down 6-0.
But you get smoked in game 2, you don't need it, and you're like, I need someone to wear it. He could get those innings, or he could get important innings. It depends how strongly they feel about it.
Yeah. Now, the back end of this bullpen is really, really important to the stretch run because obviously last year there's similar names, right? There's Alvarado and there's Sir Anthony, but there's a lot of new faces, man. And I don't know if I trust Gregory Soto in a high leverage situation from what I've seen throughout the regular season. Obviously, Kimbrel has been rocky, but what did he give up? Like 3 runs in September? Maybe like he was still really, really good in September, although be it shaky. But like you have guys, you mentioned Kerkering as the kid. Jeff Hoffman throws BP to Bryce Harper, burst onto the scene, and now has a sub-3 ERA out of this bullpen. Like he's somehow a guy I trust in a high leverage situation out of this pen. I'm joking. I don't even know if he's going to make the wild card roster, but like Dylan Covey has like a 2.5 ERA over the last like 2 or 3 months of baseball.
Yeah, I'd imagine he won't be on the roster.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, but they definitely have a lot more ammunition in the artillery compared to last year. And you mentioned a guy like Michael Lorenzen. Obviously, I don't trust him to get the ball, to start a game, to do the piggyback type of situation. He has been used so much out of the bullpen in his career. He's thrown more innings this year than I think he has at any point in his career, correct?
Easily, yes.
So if I need 3 outs, I can turn to him and maybe a 6th inning, something, the 5th inning, something like that. But I don't trust Michael Lorenzen to come out and start a ball game for this team. When you go back to the lineup, we like to do this when we talk Eagles. We like to do this when we talk Sixers, everything. There's so many different routes you can go, man. Who's your X factor? Not just this series, but to kind of catapult this team towards another World Series run.
I'm going to cheat. I mean, it's number 3. It's Bryce Harper. Like, you saw what he did last year. You saw what he's capable of as just a clutch performer. Felt like once every week he was hitting a big-time late-game home run to tie it. Now, in a lot of those circumstances, he was unlucky. The bullpen didn't hold up their end of the bargain. I don't look at that as a problem for the postseason. Like, it's kind of the weird things that happen over 162 baseball games. Right. And the adrenaline and the environment is different. Like, it's much harder to get a game-winning hit as an opposing player or as a playoff player in general when there's that type of crowd noise, that type of pressure and everything like that. So Bryce Harper has proven he can do that, and probably to the level higher than anybody else that's in this postseason. If you could ask me if I could have one player on my team for this postseason, Acuna included, Mookie Betts included, Matt Olson included, I'm taking Harper. And that's a little bit of a homer take, but look at what he did last year. He carried the Phillies to the World Series and performed in the World Series. So it's number 3. If he can be that guy again this year, they're going to be a very hard out.
Right. Less healthy at that point too, right? Like I get he's coming back from the Tommy John, but
technically,
but at least
as a hitter, it's different. But like, because you can kind of hit through it, so maybe he was used to it by that point. He's not any less healthy right now than he was last year.
Sure, but let me ask you the effect of. He was so historic sitting in the dugout while his team was in the field. And baseball players say all the time how, they don't prefer to DH because they're not active throughout those innings. Having him just at first base, albeit not right field, where he's more effective, could be another just thing to look at this postseason run where he is a part of the game through all 9 innings. So
yeah, the defense is going to be an important thing, right? Because it's not his natural position. He's a gamer, but that's probably their weakest spot defensively on the field is first base, with Bryce Harper there. I mean, Castellanos has held his own, and Schwarber's not going to be in the outfield. So you're going to have plus defenders in Marsh and Rojas and maybe even Christian Pache out there in the other spots. I mean, Stott's been outstanding. Bohm has made a huge step. Turner. I mean, shortstops are always
Right.
going to have a solid number of errors just
Yeah.
because they have to make so many difficult plays. I trust Turner in big spots. Romuto's insane.
Right.
The pitchers can field their position. First base is the only question defensively to me
Right.
going into the postseason.
Right. Nicky C's throwing guys out from foul territory in big moments.
He's got so many outfield assists. It's crazy.
I know. All right, man. Before I get your prediction for this series, give me your ideal lineup. We do this often too, but obviously we know who kind of the 9 would be. Give me the order.
Yeah, so I'm going to go Schwarber leading off. I'm going to have Turner bat second, Harper bat third, Castellanos bat cleanup. From there, it's going to get kind of interesting because I don't know. JT Realmuto has not had a great year. The question is, how
do you want the protection?
Yes, and he's a veteran guy who was a huge part last year. I mean, we all remember the inside the Parker against the Braves.
Home run in the World Series.
Do you bat him higher, trusting the track record, or do you bat him lower, trusting some of the younger guys? What I'm going to do is I'm going to bat Stott fifth, and I'm going to put him right behind Nick Castellanos to set the table again. Then I'm going to have Realmuto bat sixth. I'm going to have probably Brandon Marsh bat seventh. I'm going to put Alec Boehm down at 8 because even though he's been good, I see him as a guy that could change the game with a gap-to-gap power. He's kind of like a second Nick Castellanos. So I'm making him the second leadoff hitter by putting him in the 8 hole. And then Johan Rojas is going to bat 9th and round everything out. Too young of a player to have higher up, but a guy that can reset everything. And if he's on for Trey Turner or for Kyle Schwarber with wheels, that's a run. So
yeah. What makes me laugh about our fellow fan base, man, is how many people were still so frustrated and such in an uproar over the Kyle Schwarber leadoff thing, and getting so annoyed at the fact that this man leads off maybe once a game. This team now, with the addition of a guy like Rojas and the emergence of Bryson Stott's bat this year, Brandon Marsh, they have so many guys with their speed and their ability to put the ball in play that can set the table and lead off an inning. Like Johan Rojas, Brandon Marsh, Bryson Stott, JT. They have so many guys. So that's a difference this year compared to last year, I think, too, where you're not just obviously this team relies on the long ball, but they're not just reliant on the long ball.
Right. They're a much more balanced offense. Last year, the way they made it through the postseason was they were hitting the ball out at Citizens Bank Park at a crazy rate. And the pitching was outstanding. But you look at it this year and you say, okay, you can kill teams by single, double, single. Like they could not do that last year because they did not have the speed that they have this year.
Right. Hopefully a couple guys practice the bunt, just in case we need to.
I don't think I count on that.
All right, man. Give me your wild card prediction.
Now, the Phillies are winning this series. The question is, are they going to be able to get it done in 2 games? As much as my gut tells me that this is going to be a tight series because of the matchup with the Marlins and the divisional thing and the lefties and all that stuff, I still think that the Philadelphia Phillies have the internal ability. Like when I say internal, I'm not talking inside the player. I'm talking inside that locker room. Like they have just figured out as an organization how to win in spite of struggles, in spite of pressure, in spite of everything. They're a talented roster on top of that. I think they win it in 2 games. I think they're tight games. I think one of them might even be an extra innings game because they played a lot of those recently. But this team is going to win the first 2 games, and they're moving on to a date with the Atlanta Braves in the NLDS.
Yeah, I just think that I think there's levels to it, right? And when you look at the wild card race all year long, even when the Phillies were slightly out of the 3rd wild card, and then they were the 3rd wild card, you looked at the surrounding teams. You looked at the Reds and the Cubs and the Diamondbacks and the Marlins, and you're just like, what's different about 4 of these teams compared to 1?
Yep.
1 team's a World Series contender. The other 4 just they're not. And who, you never know. It's a momentum sport. Anything can happen, but there are levels to it. And that team walking into Citizens Bank Park tomorrow really, truly has not the slightest clue.
They don't know what they're in for.
No, they don't. The Braves know, and they still won't be ready for it. But I agree with you, man. Like I said, hopefully we'll be talking in the coming weeks. Eagles 4-0, Sixers Media Day. How about it? Never dramaless, right? But Connor Thomas, everybody, you can find him on Twitter at Connor Thomas 975. You can find him over on the Fanatic, Locked On Phillies podcast, Bleacher Report, Philly in 50. Everything. He does a lot of TikTok dances. He cooks food. He does everything.
I don't do the TikTok dances.
No, he does. Now. Don't let him lie to you. He does. Maybe for a Phillies World Series, but
maybe.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we'll be talking to you soon.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Have a good one.